Modern capitalism, the American dream, competition. These are the time-tested mantras of small business throughout this country. These businesses passed from generation to generation, established their own little niche in their communities. But what happens when that friendly competition threatens those businesses and it becomes a cutthroat game? Is greed, in fact, always good? What happens when one of those businesses fails and the owners are left with nothing but a heart full of sadness and a gut full of revenge? Could that friendly competition turn deadly? It's a gruesome scene, the type of story out of a mob movie. Jeffrey Esper slumped over at his desk in a pool of blood, shot in the head, execution style. His dog rags on the floor, having met the same fate. Esper was a well-known business owner in the bustling and electric Susquehanna Square in Wissahickon, Pennsylvania. He operated the Hole in the Wall, a local watering hole competing for customers, hard-earned cash with other square businesses. In the span of a little more than a month, Esper went from being one of the lucky winners of a substantial scratch-off lottery ticket prize to a murder victim. While Esper should have been enjoying his lottery windfall, instead he is using it to escalate his friendly competition with other establishments on Pizza, a pizza joint on the same square. Esper was ready to win at all costs, and he launched a full-on nuclear war, buying the building and evicting the competition entirely. Standing accused of this brutal murder is Addison Booker, the owner of On Pizza, who makes no attempt to hide their hatred for Esper. The Commonwealth alleges that Booker conspired with local ne'er-do-well Randy Sudo to take Esper out. Large cash withdrawals and suspect conversations during clandestine meetings are at the heart of the Commonwealth's case. But what about Sam Chestnut, owner of Sam's Old Town Tavern, with his own secrets, struggling with worsening alcoholism and perhaps a failing business themselves? Could Sam Chestnut have been desperate enough to resort to murder to weed out his competition? Or could Booker just had enough? Jeffrey Esper and his dog rags lie dead in a brutal murder scene. The once electric and vibrant square community, now forever tarnished by this grisly crime committed there. Wissahick's peace, yet once again disturbed. But who killed them? What is that? That is the question of this year's mock trial. And we are ready to begin the final round of the 2023-2024 Pennsylvania Bar Association High School Mock Trial Competition. Are the teams ready?
Yes.
Perfect. We are honored today to have the Honorable Jennifer Wilson of the United States District Court of the Middle District of Pennsylvania presiding. I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair, Jennifer Meniketti, who will be the bailiff today, and we'll take it from here.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning. On behalf of the Young Lawyers Division of the Pennsylvania Bar Association, I would like to welcome all of you to the final, state final of our 2024 PBA High School Mock Trial Competition. As John said, my name is Jen Meniketti. I'm one of the statewide co-chairs for the program. I can see your badges, so I know we have A2 and A4, which are our two final competitors. Today, the teams will be trying the case of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania v. Addison Booker, which John just gave you a summary of. I'm going to be your bailiff today, so I'll be sitting right here in front of Judge Wilson. We are pleased to have as our presiding judge the Honorable Jennifer Wilson. She is a judge with the United States District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. That's federal court, and she sits here in Harrisburg. At this time, I'm going to ask the scoring judges to introduce themselves, please. Go ahead, John.
I am John Jaden, case officer. I'm Bill Chrisman, Deputy Executive Director and General Counsel of the Pennsylvania Bar Association.
I'm Matt Holliday, I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Bar Association.
I'm Tracy Noggle, I'm a partner with Forrest Oak and Hunt Kermansky and Noggle.
I am Jen Coatsworth, I'm a partner at Margolis Edelstein.
I'm David Kavaskas, I'm the Pro Bono Coordinator of the Pennsylvania Bar Association.
Wesley Payne, I'm a partner at White Williams.
Stephanie Manimal, Assistant Director, Legislative Reference Bureau.
Philip Ewan, Chief Staff Attorney, Superior Court of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, at this time, counsel for the prosecution, are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, counsel for the defense, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. Okay, at this time, all rise, please. The Court of Common Pleas of Laurel County is now in session. The Honorable Jennifer Wilson presiding.
Thank you.
Please be seated.
Good morning, almost afternoon to all of you.
It is my tremendous honor and privilege to preside over the final round of Pennsylvania statewide mock trial competition. I know that there is, I can feel actually the tremendous energy in this room, some degree of exhaustion perhaps, but certainly excitement on behalf of our students and their families and friends and coaches and attorney advisors. On behalf of everyone up here, I think we are all just as excited as you are. So, just a few matters before we turn to the trial, the main event. Let me just note from students, as we begin today's trial, I hope that your experience with the trial process as students in the mock trial competition has allowed you to see the importance of our courts, the judges, and the lawyers who practice in our courts to uphold our rule of law. The United States and Pennsylvania constitutions grant every citizen the right to have their cases decided by the courts in a fair and impartial manner. Judges and lawyers swear an oath to uphold our Constitution. We hope that you have developed an appreciation of the judicial system's crucial role in our republic, a little more based on your experience with mock trial, and that your experience will compel you as citizens to support and protect judicial independence. As the founders of both our nation and our Commonwealth recognized, the independence of the courts is vital to a free and democratic society. All right, now a few administrative matters before we turn to the trial. I'd like to verify first with my judging panel that none of you have seen either of these teams in the courtroom present here today compete in a previous round of this competition, and that you do not believe that you have any other conflict with either of these teams. If you believe you have a conflict of that nature, please indicate so now. All right, none of our judges have indicated any conflict. Next, I would ask everyone in the courtroom, in the gallery, in the box, to turn off all electronic devices or place them in silent mode. If you do receive a message that you need to respond to, I would ask that you immediately leave the courtroom in order to handle that matter. Speaking of leaving the courtroom, the students need to devote their full attention to the matter at hand, and so I would ask that if you do need to leave the courtroom, you do your best to limit your exit and entry to times between witnesses. In other words, when there is nothing proceeding in the front of the courtroom. All right, with those instructions provided, I would now ask each team, starting with the prosecution, to introduce its participating members by name and role. I'll remind you, of course, not to identify your team. Please proceed.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Jaden Lamb, and today I, along with my co-counsel, represent the Commonwealth in today's proceedings. I'll be conducting the direct examination of Detective Jaden Kobayashi and the cross-examination of Ms. Phoenix Webb.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Suri Mokhtari. I will be conducting the direct examination of Robin Leco, cross-examination of Pooky Thomas, along with delivering the opening statement.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Zachary Riggle. I will be conducting the direct examination of Sam Chestnut, the cross-examination of Mr. Addison Booker, and delivering the closing arguments, along with our witnesses.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is JT Healy, and today I will be Robin Leco.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is William Newton. Today I will be Jaden Kobayashi.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Thomas Rossini, and today I will be Sam Chestnut. Thank you.
Thank you all. Defense?
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Catherine Wyrick, and I, along with my co-counsel, will be representing the defendant, Addison Booker. In today's proceedings, I will be performing the direct examination of Addison Booker, the cross-examination of Sam Chestnut, as well as the closing statements. And this is my co-counsel.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Mallory Snyder, and I will be giving the direct examination of Pooky Thomas, as well as the cross-examination of Jaden Kobayashi.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is John Riley. I'll be giving the opening statement, the cross-examination of Robin Leco, and the direct examination of Phoenix Webb.
Thank you. And these are our witnesses.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Caitlin Edwards, and I'll be portraying Phoenix Webb.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Charles Stewart. I am portraying Addison Booker.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hadley Lamb, and I will be portraying Pooky Thomas.
All right, thank you all. And now, the court will call forward the trial in the matter of Commonwealth versus Addison Booker. Counsel for the prosecution, please present your opening statement.
A few preliminary matters from the prosecution, if that's all right with Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Your Honor, we'd just like to establish that in this jurisdiction, witnesses are constructively sequestered, barring party representatives. In this case, the Commonwealth is not offering a party representative, and our party opponent is the defendant, Miss Addison Booker.
So noted.
And with that, Your Honor, the prosecution's ready to proceed with opening statements.
Please proceed.
May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Surya Mokhtari, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in tonight's trial. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is as simple as the A, B, C's. Aggression, bankruptcy, and conspiracy. A. Aggression. In a town of Lusui, Pennsylvania, there existed a long-lasting feud between two businesses, Anamat Pizza, owned by the defendant, and the Hole in the Wall, owned by the victim. As you will clearly hear throughout tonight's trial, the defendant, Addison Booker, acted with escalating aggression towards the victim, Jeffrey Esper. B. Bankruptcy. In April 2023, the victim, Jeffrey Esper, was lucky enough to win the lottery. As a last attempt to stop the feud with Addison Booker, the victim bought the defendant's building, evicted him from the property, and then orchestrated the cancellation of his beer contract. As a result of all of these actions, the defendant, Addison Booker, went bankrupt. And for this, he blamed the victim, Jeffrey Esper. The defendant, Addison Booker, snapped, which leads us to C, conspiracy. Addison Booker conspired with an ex-convict, Randy Sudo, paying him $12,000 to murder Jeffrey Esper. Then, during the town's biggest event, Addison Booker ran up on stage, grabbed the microphone, and in front of a crowd, publicly threatened to kill Jeffrey Esper. 4 days later, Randy Sudo followed through with what Addison Booker paid him to do, and he shot Jeffrey Esper in the back of the head, execution style. We've charged Addison Booker with 2 crimes, first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. As the prosecution in tonight's case, we hold the burden of proof. We must prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, each element of these 2 charges. The charge of first-degree murder has 3 elements. 1, that Jeffrey Esper is dead. 2, that he was killed by an accomplice or a co-conspirator of the defendant, Addison Booker. And 3, that the victim was killed intentionally and with malice. The second charge is conspiracy to commit murder. This crime has 2 elements. 1, that there was an agreement made to commit the crime. And 2, that the defendant completed a specific act to further the conspiracy. Ladies and gentlemen, as you listen to the testimony provided today, we will lay out for you how Addison Booker's aggression, bankruptcy, and conspiracy directly led to the death of the victim. You will hear from a local food critic along with a restaurant owner on the square. They will give specific testimony of Addison Booker's aggressive actions towards Jeffrey Esper and the escalating feud between the 2 that culminated in the defendant conspiring for the murder of the victim. You will then hear from the lead detective in this case. He will relate to the results of his investigation, which determined that Addison Booker went bankrupt, and he used the last of his money paying an ex-convict $12,000 to murder Jeffrey Esper. Ladies and gentlemen, this case truly is as simple as the ABCs. Aggression, bankruptcy, and, most importantly, conspiracy. During closing arguments today, my co-counsel, Zachary Riggle, will stand before you to review the evidence presented. After hearing all of the testimony provided today, we are confident that the evidence will prove that Addison Booker paid Randy Pseudo $12,000 to murder Jeffrey Esper. He will then ask that you respectfully find Addison Booker guilty of the charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. All right, I will now invite counsel for the defendant to present an opening statement.
May I proceed?
You may.
May it please the court, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. Liquor, lies, and law. Throughout today's case, these three L's will help explain why the defendant, Addison Booker, was wrongfully accused of the murder of Jeffrey Esper. And they may even help shine light on who truly murdered Jeffrey Esper. Please, allow me to explain. In small town Wissowee, Pennsylvania, sits Susquehanna Square, a square containing numerous small restaurants and businesses alike. Now, the residents of Wissowee are well aware of the deep-rooted feud between two of these restaurants in particular. On Pizza, owned by Addison Booker, and The Hole in the Wall, owned by the decedent Jeffrey Esper. However, what many residents may not be as aware of is that Sam Chestnut, owner of Sam's Old Town Tavern, had a lot more to gain from this feud than Esper or Booker ever did. And as stated previously, all this can be explained using three L's. Which brings me to the first L in today's case, liquor. Sam Chestnut, the lesser of the three bar owners in Wissowee, was always working in the shadows of Jeffrey Esper and Addison Booker, but especially Jeffrey Esper. You see, Esper was always driving business away from Sam's tavern, though Esper also wasn't the only thing burning a hole in Sam Chestnut's pockets. You see, Sam has a serious alcohol problem, and this problem carries over into the workplace, where Sam drinks alongside his very own customers. As you can all imagine, Sam's lost a lot of money because of this. No one else is financing his addiction. Needless to say, money was looking tight for old Sam Chestnut. Or at least that was until Jeffrey Esper was murdered and Addison Booker was arrested for his murder. That's right. With Sam's two biggest competitors out of the picture, his business has been through the roof. And of course, this brings me to the second L in today's case. Lies. Randy Subin, the man who Addison Booker allegedly hired to murder Jeffrey Esper, had lied to Booker about what he was actually going to do with this money. You see, Booker was under the impression that he was hiring Pseudo to rebuild his deck that had burned down in a fire. As you can see, Booker never had any hand in the murder of Jeffrey Esper and wanted nothing more than to have his business's deck rebuilt. And this brings me to the third and final L in today's case, law. Today, prosecution will come before you, and they will try to say that lead detective Jaden Kobayashi led a reliable investigation. This is simply not true. You'll hear from the defense that Kobayashi's entire career as a detective has been plagued with mistakes, up to and including the investigation of Jeffrey Esper's murder, which, might I remind you, is the very investigation that this entire case is based around. Now, law also encompasses the burden of proof. And as today's case is a criminal case, we, the defense, have no burden of proof. This means the entire burden rests solely with the prosecution, and they must prove two things beyond a reasonable doubt. One, Addison Booker committed first-degree murder. And two, Addison Booker conspired with somebody else to commit first-degree murder. And if they don't prove these two things beyond a reasonable doubt, you cannot convict Addison Booker. Throughout today's case, not only will you find that there's simply a lack of evidence against Booker, but you'll also find many of these case facts may align with somebody else committing this heinous crime. And that's why tonight, my co-counsel, Catherine Wyrick, will come before you and ask for a verdict of not guilty for Addison Booker. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Counsel for the prosecution, please call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Robin Leco to the stand.
Please proceed.
Please state your name and age for the members of the jury.
Hi, my name is Robin Leco, 51 years old.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Leco?
Well, in past life, I was a Navy man, 23 years active service. I was a commander on a battleship in the Red Sea. Nowadays, though, I'm just a food critic, but I still love it all the same. You see, I write food merchant. It's this restaurant review blog with the Whiskey newspaper. I'm also an adjunct instructor with Whiskey Vocational Text Culinary Arts Program. Over there, I teach important content, including cooking and restaurant management. I like to think of myself as a Gordon Ramsay type guy, just minus his profanity, obviously.
Now, Mr. Leco, I want to talk about the people involved in this case. You're on permission to approach the witness and opposing counsel who has previously been marked as Exhibit 3.
Permission granted.
Yes, please.
Your Honor, would you like a copy?
Thank you, counsel. I have an exhibit binder, so you do not need to provide a copy to me.
Mr. Leco, did you know Jeffrey Esper, the victim?
Yeah, Jeffrey Esper. He was the owner of a hole-in-the-wall restaurant right here on Whistler Square. It was an upscale bar food type place. The sandwiches were incredible. The best aspect of it, people came from all over to get those hole-in-the-wall sandwiches.
Now, excuse me, I'd like to discuss this exhibit now. Is this a fair and accurate representation?
Oh, yes it is. This is a map of Susquehanna, or as a lot of people refer to it, Whistler Square.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 3 to evidence.
Is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 3 is admitted.
Permission to publish this document to the jury?
Permission granted.
Now, Mr. Leco, you mentioned you knew Jeffrey Esper, the victim. Would you mind explaining exactly where he was again?
Oh, yeah, so Jeffrey Esper owned the hole-in-the-wall restaurant right there on Whistler Square. Upscale bar, food type place, great sandwiches.
And do you know the defendant, Mr. Addison Booker?
Booker, yeah, I knew him as well. So Addison Booker owned Hot Pizza Sandwich. As you can see, it's just 2 doors down Quick Street from the home. It was more of a traditional pizza type place. I'm pretty sure it was Sicilian, but the pizzas were incredible. Authentic as it gets, and once again, people around the square and around the county love them. But it's worth noting that because of the close proximity of the 2 businesses and a somewhat similar customer base, there was a bit of a feud between the owners, Booker and Esper.
What do you mean by a feud?
Well, I'm saying a feud, but based on what I saw personally, it was a lot more aggressive than that. You see, Booker and Esper couldn't get along for the life of them.
Now, I want to talk more about the relationship between the defendant and the victim. Based on your observations, Mr. Lesko, what made you think that they did not get along?
Oh, counsel, there's a lot of different directions to go with this, but the May 15th story is a good example. So, as I said, May 15th, well, Jeffrey Esper, the guy from the hole in the wall, he took a little walk, but he was on his way to his rival's restaurant, on Pizza. But get this, he wasn't alone. He was with the Wissahickon Police Department, and they had eviction papers that kicked Addison Booker out of his restaurant, well, out of his building, but Clayton Peterson did. And then it was just 2 days later, May 17th. I was sitting in Carly's coffee shop, which, as you can see, it's a little diner, maybe 50s type place, located right between the two restaurants. That's when I saw Addison Booker walk in.
Was he alone?
No. Soon Booker sat down at the counter with this guy, Randy Sudo, who I knew from around town. From what I saw and heard, obviously, they were talking to each other about something.
What was their conversation about?
So I heard Booker asked Sudo if he was right, and then Booker nudged him a bit and said, "Come on, it's not like you haven't done it before." After that, things got interesting. Booker said in his harsh tone that dirtbag Esper is going to get what's coming. Then took out a stack of cash, huge wad, plopped it down on the counter, covered it in a white napkin. I could see the green money sticking out against the napkin clear as day. He slid over to Sudo, and in doing so, Booker told him to fix this problem quickly. To that, Sudo responded with, "When you are sure, call me. Don't send it."
Objection, Your Honor. This is a hearsay statement.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Pursuant to Rule 803.3, the statement of Randy Sudo's then existing state of mind, which in this case, a plan, is deemed an exception to hearsay.
Any response?
Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to ask opposing counsel what plan exactly is being discussed by Randy Sudo.
Your response?
Well, the foundation has already been laid that Addison Booker has handed Randy Sudo large sums of cash. In addition to this, Randy Sudo responded with, "When you are sure, call me, don't send a text," which is in furtherance of the plan.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
This statement is very vague and does not in any way outline any specific plan, so this does not fall under 803.3.
I understand your argument. Your objection is overruled, and you may answer the question.
So, as I was saying, at the end of this conversation, Sudo said, "When you are sure, call me. Don't send a text."
And just to be clear, Mr. Lesko, you heard this conversation 2 days after the eviction?
15, 16. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. You can set aside the exhibit for now. I want to talk to you about the death of the victim, Jeffrey Esper. When did you first hear about Mr. Esper's death?
Well, it was the week after the Save Square. It's this huge party called Save Square. We'll talk about it all day, but that's when word spread across Wissahickon at a wildfire pace that Jeffrey Esper was dead. Now, for about a week after that, I get my head out of things, just writing my blogs and all that, but later on, Detective Jaden Kobayashi reached out to me. He wanted me to contribute to his official investigation on the crime. Of course, I was happy to help. I told him everything I just said here.
Was there anything else Detective Kobayashi asked you, Mr. Lesko?
Yes. It was late June, early July here. Detective Kobayashi sat me down in a cop car with him. He wanted me to identify someone walking by with a few of the officers. And what I noticed is that the guy with them was Randy Sudo, the same one from the cafe with Addison Booker, the money and harsh tones and all that.
Now, moving on, I want to talk about something that you've previously mentioned, Save the Square. Would you mind explaining exactly what this event is?
I would not mind at all, counsel. Savor is only the biggest party in central Pennsylvania. I like to say that Savor is to Wissahickon as Mardi Gras is to New Orleans. It's this huge party. The local businesses, they set up booths to sell their products. Everyone's out, and to be honest, most importantly, everyone's spending their money. It's a huge opportunity for the local businesses to make a solid profit for the college students. Their main market are out for the summer.
You said local businesses. Was Mr. Addison Booker involved in this event?
Yes, being a local business owner, Booker was there slinging his pies.
Now, was there anything else you noticed specifically during this event, Mr. Lesko?
Yes, so it was during the music segment of Savor. They get all these concert stages set up, microphones and speakers, and it's really fun most of the time. But this time it was different. It was Walter Botter's, everyone's favorite bands were performing. Addison Booker, ran up on stage. He snatched the mic from the lead singer and yelled out to the crowd of hundreds of people, "I'm gonna kill you, I'm going to kill you."
Thank you, Mr. Lesko. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good morning, Mr. Lesko. Now, you currently reside in Wissowee as a food critic, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but as a food critic, you aren't paid through a salary, but you're paid through article clicks, is that right?
So, yeah, excluding my naval pension, my main source of income is clicks on my articles.
So, basically what that means is the more popular a certain article is, the more you're going to get paid for it, right?
Yes.
Now, as a food critic, you've gotten to know many of the restaurant owners in Wissowee, right?
Yes, I'm all around.
You got to know Jeffrey Esper and Addison Booker?
Yeah.
And you've even reviewed both of their restaurants, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
In fact, when you reviewed Jeffrey Esper's restaurant, he gave you some free food, didn't he?
He gave me a couple free samples, which helps when I'm writing my reviews.
And on top of this free food, he also gave you some financial assistance on the side, right?
One time he gave me a few bucks. Helps out. He's a good guy.
Of course. And on the other hand, when you reviewed Booker's restaurant, he didn't give you anything for free, right? No. Now, you got to know the conflict that went on between Booker and Esper, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And when you learned of this conflict, you went to writing articles about it, correct?
Yes.
And these articles that you wrote, they kept doing better and better, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And at one point, you even began blogging about this conflict daily.
Yes, that's true. For a lot of using it.
Now, Mr. Lesko, I'd like to talk about what you saw on May 17th. You saw Addison Booker meet up with Randy Sudo at Carly's Coffee Shop, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you tried to listen to their conversation.
Yes, I was listening in. It was hard to miss it. They were talking pretty loudly, too.
However, during your time in the Navy, you did experience some hearing loss, correct?
Oh, yeah. Very minor. Luckily, it has almost no impact on my daily life. But yes, that's correct.
But on top of this, as this was a busy cafe, there were plenty of pots and pans clanging and even side conversations going on around you.
Yeah, back towards the kitchen, there were some pots and some people talking towards the back. That's correct.
And isn't it true that Addison Booker and Randy Sudo weren't even facing you?
No, they're at the counter a few feet away.
So you couldn't completely hear everything that was said?
I heard it, most of it word for word.
You couldn't hear everything, could you?
I got most of the things they said, that's all I heard.
Yes or no, you 100% clearly heard everything that was said during this conversation?
Yes, I heard it all.
So it's your sworn testimony today in court that you heard every bit of this conversation?
Yes.
Word for word, 100%?
As far as I know, yes, unless they kept talking outside.
So, you're aware of your sworn affidavit, correct?
Yes.
And you signed this affidavit?
Yes, I did.
And you're aware that you had 24 hours to make any necessary changes to it?
Yes, that's what I was told.
And you don't think that hearing 100% of a conversation would be important to add into this affidavit?
As far as I know, I heard everything that you said to each other.
But you don't know if you did hear everything?
Unless there was some whispering now.
Of course. Now moving on. After this, you continued to write about the conflict between Esper and Booker, correct?
Yes, I did.
Sadly though, the news desk, they only used you for background stories.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The news desk only used your articles in background stories, correct?
Oh, yes, they did.
And so to maybe try and scrounge up a little more money from this feud, you decided to start writing a book about it?
It wasn't, my main goal wasn't profit. I mean, I like writing, and I decided it's a good opportunity to write a book, yes.
But you could profit from this book?
Yes, I could.
Thank you, Mr. Lesko. No further questions, Your Honor.
Counsel for the prosecution, is there any redirect examination of this witness?
No redirect, Your Honor. I just asked that my witness is excused from the stand.
The witness may be excused. Counsel for the prosecution, please call your second witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the prosecution calls Detective Jaden Kobayashi to the stand.
All right, detective, please come forward.
Please state your name for the members of the jury.
My name is Jaden Kobayashi.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a detective for the Whistler Police Department. I've been for the past 5 years. Before that, I spent 10 years in Philly as a patrol officer. Where's my job? To sweep the streets of violent criminals and perpetrators. So, I like to say I spent 15 years on the job.
And could you please describe your education and experience for the court?
Of course, I graduated from Penn State in 2009. As a fresh detective, straight out of Philly, I graduated from the Harrisburg Police Academy. Additionally, each year it's my job to undergo 25 hours of coursework to recertify myself in crime scene management.
So how are you involved with today's case?
Well, I'm the lead detective. We're here in court today because I'm the one who arrested Addison Booker for the murder of Mr. Jeffrey Esper.
And is the defendant, Ms. Booker, in the courtroom with us today?
Yes, he is, sitting between two witnesses, middle chair.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the defendant has been identified in court by the lead investigating detective.
The record will so reflect.
Detective, what steps did you take in your investigation?
Well, I interviewed witnesses, gathered forensic and ballistic reports, as well as subpoenaing bank records, as well as text conversations. I relied upon all of these to form my conclusions.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit Detective Jaden Kobayashi as an expert in crime scene management.
Detective Kobayashi is admitted as an expert in the field of crime scene management.
Detective, how did you start your investigation?
I was called to Mr. Esper's restaurant, The Hole in the Wall, on Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. Upon my arrival, officers had already secured the crime scene around Mr. Esper's, unfortunately, dead body. And now, I will say this, as for crime scenes that I've witnessed in my tenure, this was certainly one of the cleaner ones.
Why did you think it was one of the cleaner crimes that you've seen?
Just like I said it, nothing in Mr. Esper's office was stolen or even moved. As for Mr. Esper, he was shot with only one bullet, execution style, clean to the back of his head. We found his dog shot twice too. At this point, I felt it was clear what happened, so I began looking into potential suspects.
And who were these potential suspects?
Addison Booker was the top suspect. It was well known, at least around the Whistler Police Department, that Booker and Mr. Esper had been feuding for some time.
Well, why was this feud between the defendant and the victim well known around the police department?
The two had called the station angry about accusations of aggravated trespassing, internet sabotage, and more made-up nonsense. Although, some of it was serious.
Well, how did their feud get serious?
Last February, Mona Pizza's deck burnt down. They never caught the guy who did it, but Booker. Booker tried to get Mr. Esper locked up for arson. The feud just didn't stop there.
In what way did it continue?
On May 15th, Mr. Esper bought up a building at Booker's restaurant Mona Pizza was in, and served Booker an eviction notice right out in public. So look, the two simply had it out for each other. And when Mr. Esper turned up murdered...
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Response?
Speculation as to which part of the testimony, Your Honor?
Yes, Your Honor. As to the two having it out for each other.
Response?
Your Honor, the proper foundation has been laid for him to be able to make a rationally based perception. He opened an investigation into the victim and the defendant, and he's just testifying to his expert opinion as to what he perceived. Seeing as the feud was well known around the police department, he'd be well aware of what they did to contribute to this feud equally.
While the detective has testified that Addison Booker and Jeffrey Esper have made public actions against each other, he cannot go as far as to delve into their mindset and to state that they had it out for each other. That is not something he could be aware of.
Response?
Your Honor, seeing as they had internet sabotage, they made phone calls, the defendant tried to get the victim locked up for arson, I'm sure that he would be able to testify that they had it out for each other, that they didn't like each other. He's testifying to his rationally based perception under 701A.
The objection is overruled. I'll allow the testimony.
Were you finished with your response, Detective?
No, it's not. I can finish. I was just going to say the two had it out for each other, and when Mr. Esper was murdered, after this whole thing went down, I feel that Booker would be a good place to start my investigation. So, I tried to meet him for an interview.
Did you meet the defendant, Mr. Booker, for an interview?
I tried. I went to Booker's house, but he was simply nowhere to be found. Now, it took quite a bit of time, but my team was able to locate his whereabouts, and we were able to luckily move forward in our investigation.
How did you continue your investigation?
At this point, I interviewed Robin Leco, Phoenix Webb, and Sam Chestnut. From my interviews, the possibility was revealed that Addison Booker hired a certain man named Randy Sudo to kill Mr. Esper.
Objection, Your Honor. Under Rule 704, this goes to the opinion on the ultimate issue.
Response?
Your Honor, under 704, embracing the ultimate issue isn't automatically objectionable. It's only admissible if the witness is if an expert witness is testifying to the state of mind of the defendant. He's only testifying to the evidence that he collected, and there's no state of mind being offered by the defendant.
By the detective stating that Addison Booker hired Randy Sudo to kill Jeffrey Esper, this indirectly goes to show that he did have the mental capacity and mindset to commit this act, and this is simply left up for the jury to determine, and by the detective saying this will unfairly sway them, and he is not able to give his opinion on this matter.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
As the prosecution in today's case, it's our burden to prove that Addison Booker solicited the murder of Jeffrey Esper. We can't prove that unless we're allowed to testify to Addison Booker having a cash payout to Randy Sudo. Therefore, it's essential to our case theory that Addison Booker paid Randy Sudo.
All right, this is a close call, but I will overrule the objection and allow the testimony.
Were you finished with the response?
No, I'll finish it by saying, at this point, after hearing that, I knew I had to investigate Randy Sudo.
Did your investigation into Randy Sudo reveal anything?
Yes, it did. That's where we found a .38 caliber Ross handgun at Sudo's apartment. After comparing the ballistic tests from both the scene of the crime and Sudo's gun, we can confirm Randy Sudo's gun was used to execute Mr. Esper.
I want to shift your attention to the defendant, Mr. Booker. Did your investigation into Addison Booker reveal anything?
Yes, it did. And now, that's where the case gets really interesting. Randy Sudo might have pulled the trigger. Based upon my further investigation, Randy Sudo was just a hitman for Addison Booker. You know, it all makes sense. Knowing Booker and Mr. Esper's history, as well as after what Booker pulled at Save the Square.
What did Addison Booker do at the Save the Square event?
Well, he was dead and Booker threatened to kill Mr. Esper, right in front of me and a whole crowd of people. He said, and I quote, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, you ruined me."
Now, Detective, I want to shift your attention to those bank records you mentioned earlier. Your Honor, permission to approach what's been previously marked as Exhibit 10.
Permission granted.
This is the copy I'll be showing the witness. Would you like a copy? Your Honor has a copy?
I do. Thank you, counsel.
Can you please identify this document for the jury?
Yes, I can. This appears to be Addison Booker's personal as well as business bank accounts.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of those bank records?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 10 in evidence.
Is there any objection?
No objection.
All right, without objection, Exhibit 10 is admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Permission granted.
Detective Kobayashi, why did you subpoena the defendant's bank records?
Well, you know what they say, they follow the money. And in this case, we're looking for a paper trail connection between Pseudo and Booker.
And what was in these bank records?
Well, as you can clearly see, on May 17th, Booker withdrew $12,000 in cash. $5,000 from her personal account, and then an additional $7,000 from her business account, totaling $12,000.
Detective, you testified to this figure of $12,000. Was it significant?
It most certainly was. We found that paper trail connection between Pseudo and Booker. My investigation can't confirm that Randy Pseudo received the exact amount of money that Addison Booker withdrew to kill Mr. Esper.
Thank you, Detective. You can set that exhibit aside. Have you reached an opinion in this case rendered to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Yes, I have.
What is this opinion?
Well, it's really quite simple. I'll even lay it out for you. On May 15th, Booker was evicted from his property by Mr. Esper. On the 17th, Booker met with a man named Randy Pseudo and withdrew $12,000 in cash. Then, on the 19th, Booker publicly threatened to kill Mr. Esper, and then finally, on May 23rd, Mr. Esper was indeed murdered. So again, it's really quite simple. Addison Booker hired Randy Pseudo to kill Mr. Esper.
Thank you, Detective. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Detective.
Afternoon.
So you led a crime scene unit through the hole in the wall on May 23rd, yes?
That's correct, and I was the lead detective.
Now, I'd actually like to backtrack for a moment here to your tenure in Philadelphia. Isn't it true that you were reprimanded 2 times for moving key evidence at a crime scene?
That's correct, back as a patrol officer. I've received more training since then.
But this has happened 2 times in your past.
Yes, it has.
Now, getting back to today's case, isn't it true that you had a keypad at the hole in the wall tested for fingerprints?
That's true.
And would you recognize a copy of this fingerprint analysis if I were to show it to you?
I will.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness and opposing counsel with Exhibit 9.
Permission granted.
Let the record reflect this is the same copy always shown to the witness. So, Detective, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
And could you briefly tell the jury what it is?
This appears to be the forensics of the... Let's see. The keypad on the back of the hole in the wall, where I was able to find fingerprints of known suspects.
And this is a fair and accurate copy, yes?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense moves to enter Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
No objection pursuant to Stipulation 18, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 9 is admitted.
Permission to publish to the jury, Your Honor?
Permission granted.
So, Detective, just to be clear, the only conclusive fingerprints found on the keypad are from yourself and Pooky Thomas?
Yes, but while it says conclusive, due to corroborating evidence, we can confirm those fingerprints on this.
But the only conclusive fingerprints are from yourself and Pooky Thomas?
Yes, while it says that, we can confirm no ones, such as Randy Pseudo, based on corresponding evidence as well as circumstantial evidence.
However, Detective, directing you back to my initial question, the only conclusive fingerprints stated on here are from yourself and Pooky Thomas.
No, like I said, we were able to figure out that these were Randy Sudo's and other people's fingerprints.
But Randy Sudo's prints on here are only stated to be partial prints.
That's correct, but based upon direct and circumstantial evidence, we can confirm that they are Randy Sudo's, because we know Randy Sudo was at the home.
Now, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about that. Flipping to the second page, I'd like to direct your attention to the second paragraph of the narrative report. Please read silently as I read aloud. Most reasonable conclusion is that Detective Kobayashi interacted with crime scene prior to evidence capture while not wearing gloves. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
It also states, recommend notice letter to department and additional training for Detective Kobayashi.
Yes, it does.
So, just to be clear, you did not wear gloves when collecting key evidence at this crime scene?
That's correct. A fault of my own. For our investigation, it did not interfere too majorly.
However, looking down at the last paragraph, please read silently as I read aloud. No additional conclusions can be drawn. These partial prints might have been fuller, but for the prints overlaid on them, partially destroying them for purposes of analysis. These overlaying prints include those of J. Kobayashi. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did, but again, we can confirm the fingerprints on here based on circumstantial and direct evidence.
But this report says that your fingerprints did destroy some of the prints on this keypad.
I'd ask you which fingerprints were destroyed on it.
The partial prints.
Partial prints of Randy Sudo?
Yes.
Like I said, Randy Sudo's prints can be confirmed based on circumstantial evidence.
But they could have been fuller if you were wearing gloves.
Objection, Your Honor. Made for personal knowledge. This witness is not qualified in forensic analysis, or forensic science. He can't testify as to whether or not what would have happened if he did something else, as he's not qualified as an expert in this field.
Your Honor, as an expert in crime scene management, this would go directly to the question that I asked the witness. He should know whether or not wearing gloves would allow a fingerprint to be more full, as this is a direct part of managing a crime scene.
Your Honor, the defense counsel is asking him to testify to what would have happened to the fingerprints. He's not trained in forensic analysis or forensic science, so he can't testify to this line of questioning.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
So, Detective, again, if you were wearing gloves, these prints might have been fuller.
Yes, that's true, but like I've been saying, you can clearly see Randy Sudo's name in the exhibits. We know these are Randy Sudo's prints.
And just to clarify, that was the only spot where fingerprints were found at the crime scene?
That's correct.
And moving on, I'd like to talk to you about Addison Booker. He was your first possible suspect that you thought of.
Yes, he was.
You then went to the judge to obtain a search warrant for his home.
I did.
And the judge turned you down.
That's correct.
However, Addison actually offered to have you search his house.
Yes, he did.
And you found nothing inside of his house?
That's correct. I remind everyone that we're here on conspiracy to murder. We didn't expect to find much.
But you didn't find anything?
Yes.
Now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Sam Chestnut. You actually thought that he could have been involved in this case somehow.
That's correct. That's exactly why I launched an investigation into Sam.
Right, but the only investigating that you did into Sam was looking at his financial records?
No, that's not correct at all.
The only investigation you did was looking into his financial records and having a conversation with him that he came to you with.
No, my investigation detailed all of the evidence we looked at in this case, and at the end of the day, there's simply no evidence that points to Sam Chestnut for any of my witness testimonies, as well as any other bit of evidence.
But the only investigating you did into Sam Chestnut was looking at his financial records and having a conversation with him. Is that right?
Like I said, I reviewed all of the evidence in my case for my suspects. There's simply nothing for Sam.
But Detective, specifically about Sam Chestnut, the only investigating you did into him was looking at his financial records.
Yes, I looked at his financials, but I reviewed all evidence, and there's nothing containing Sam Chestnut within any of it.
However, isn't it true that you still wonder about his involvement in this case, even though it's closed?
That's correct, I wonder. But I deal with facts and evidence. When there's no facts and there's no evidence against Sam Chestnut, there's simply nothing that I can do.
But you still wonder?
I wonder, but again, I've ruled out Sam Chestnut.
Now, moving on, I'd like to talk to you about Randy Sudo. You actually brought him in for questioning, yes?
That's correct.
And the only thing he told you was that he wanted a lawyer.
Yes, he did.
However, you didn't stop talking to him after this, did you?
That's correct.
You told him that Addison was just using him.
I did.
You said he should just come clean.
That's what I wish for him to do.
You even made a cooperation offer for him to testify against Addison Booker.
I did.
Objection, Your Honor. References to plea deals are improper.
Response?
Your Honor, I was not getting into any specifics of this cooperation offer. This was just simply a general statement, and I will not be delving further into the details of this possible cooperation offer.
Your Honor, just because defense counsel isn't talking about the actual details of the plea deal doesn't mean that she can't reference it. It's improper under Rule 410.
Objection's overruled. The witness can answer the question.
So Detective, again, isn't it true that you made a cooperation offer for Randy Sudo to testify against Addison Booker?
That's correct. He turned it down, though.
And you did all of this without a lawyer present, even though he requested one.
That's correct. I didn't ask any questions. I made statements which is allowed under the law.
However, you made something as severe as a cooperation offer.
I did.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, is there any redirect examination of this witness?
There's no redirect, Your Honor. We just ask that this witness please be excused from the statement.
The witness is excused. Counsel for the prosecution, please call your third witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, prosecution calls Mr. Sam Chestnut to the stand.
Mr. Chestnut, please come forward.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Please state your name for the members of the jury.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sam Chestnut.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Chestnut?
Well, back in the 90s, I used to be a pro goalie. My life. Nowadays, I own a bar called Sam's Old Tavern, which is one of the 3 main restaurants down in the square.
Mr. Chestnut, what do you mean by the 3 restaurants on the square?
Well, there's my place, Sam's Old Tavern. But then there's also Booker's, On Pizza, and Esper's Hole in the Wall. Damn, those 2 get along well.
Now, Mr. Chestnut, you're referring to Mr. Booker and Mr. Esper, the victim and the defendant?
Yeah. I mean, they were the biggest competitors on the square. My old tavern, it had its own sort of crowd, you know? So, a rivalry really didn't affect my business all that much.
Mr. Chestnut, can you explain this rivalry in a bit more detail for the members of the jury?
Yeah, I mean, they were constantly fighting, and they even tried to get the city involved a bunch of times. I remember there was this one time that Booker undercut Esper with his beer special, right? And, I mean, he put up all these flyers all over town. And then not too long after, Booker's deck was caught on fire with a big stack of those same flyers.
Did Mr. Addison Booker do anything in response to this?
Yeah, I mean, Booker came over to my place to try and form some sort of alliance against Esper. I mean, I had never seen him that mad. He was like Will Smith at the Oscars. It was crazy. I mean, I did my best to calm him down, but I don't think it worked.
Now, Mr. Chestnut, I want to shift your attention to the Save of the Square weekend. Can you explain the events of Save of the Square for the members of the jury?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's this music, food festival type thing that we had in the square. It's a real last opportunity for us businesses that were on the square to make money before all the college students cleared out. I mean, it was awesome. I mean, food, music, lights. Everyone was having a great time. Well, not everyone.
What do you mean by that, everyone?
Right as the boxer band took the stage, they're not great, by the way. Right as the boxer band took the stage, Booker sprinted up there and just went off on Esper. I kid you not, he grabbed the mic and screamed, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you," and ran off stage. And then not even a week later, they found Esper dead.
Now, Mr. Chestnut, did you ever see the defendant, Mr. Booker, again after this outburst?
Yeah, a little bit after Booker's death, a little bit after Esper's death, Booker came into my bar. I mean, everyone was kind of just moving away from him, you know? Until one of my regulars saw him at Lenny, turned around, and got up on Booker's face and accused him of murdering Esper.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Response?
Just to clarify, this is to the statement of the regular at the bar?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, the objection is to the statement of the regular.
Yes, Your Honor. The witness just stated that as soon as the regular had turned around and saw Mr. Booker, he exclaimed the accusation of killing Mr. Esper. This falls under 803.2 and excited utterance.
Your Honor, I don't believe that this would qualify under the exception of excited utterance, as there has to be a very surprising event, and just seeing another person doesn't necessarily constitute a very surprising event.
Under the circumstances, based on the testimony, I'll overrule the objection. You may answer.
So anyways, after Lenny got up in the face and accused him of murdering Esper, he shot back what Booker shot back with, and what if I did? I mean, my jaw was on the floor, I had to pick it up before we continue the conversation.
Now, did you report this event to the authorities?
No, not until after Randy Sudo had come to my bar back in June.
Mr. Chestnut, who is Randy Sudo?
Randy. Oh boy. Well, Randy's another regular at my bar. I've known him for some time, and he's done some handyman jobs for me in the past. I'll be honest though, I've done my best to keep my relationship with him strictly professional. I don't know how to say this nicely, but that makes me feel a little uncomfortable sometimes, you know?
So, directing you back, what happened when Randy Sudo came into your bar in June?
Well, Randy was a little off. He was ordering a lot more drinks than usual, and he was paying me in $100 bills. I mean, normally Randy can only afford 2 or 3 drinks. It's just weird seeing how all this cash on hand.
Did you ask Mr. Sudo how he got all this money?
Yeah. He told me he got it for doing a job. I almost wish I never asked though.
Well, what kind of job? Like a handyman job that you just referenced?
No, this was completely different. Randy told me that he got it for, well, sneaking through Esper's hole in the wall on
Objection,
Tuesday
Your
night.
Honor, hearsay as to the statements of Randy Sudo.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. The court has already ruled that a privilege applies to Randy Sudo's statements, and this deems him an unavailable declarant under 804A. Additionally, under 804B3, this is a statement against interest, and I can explain if needed.
Please do.
Yes, Your Honor. Under 804B3, A and B, the statement exposes the declarant to criminal liability, and it's corroborated by circumstances that indicate trustworthiness, making it an exception to hearsay for an unavailable declarant.
Your response?
Yes, Your Honor. Pursuant to Mock Trial Rule 804B3B, this has to be corroborated by, it has to be clearly corroborated by circumstances that indicate trustworthiness. And as this witness just stated on direct examination, Randy Sudo was acting off and he was drinking quite a bit this night, so this would go to the untrustworthiness of the statement, and no foundation has been laid for corroborating circumstances that would show the trustworthiness of the statements elicited by Randy Sudo.
Permission to respond on those new grounds, Your Honor?
Permission granted.
Yes, Your Honor. Under 804B3B, which opposing counsel just referenced, the corroborating circumstances that clearly indicate trustworthiness are not of the situation at hand, but rather the statement. In this instance, there have been multiple testimonies on the record that corroborate the story Randy Sudo has mentioned. Additionally, this witness was a regular, Randy Sudo was a regular at this witness's bar, and it would be reasonable for him to have this conversation with him, meeting this exception.
The objection is overruled, and you may continue.
Now, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
So what happened, what kind of job?
Yeah, so, as I was saying, Randy told me that he got all this money for sneaking through Esper's hole in the wall. And it was on a Tuesday night, because that's when they're closed. He used the back keypad to get in, walked through the hole in the wall, snuck into where Esper's office was, and tapped them. And then he said that he killed his poor dog, Rags, too. I mean, the whole conversation made me absolutely sick to my stomach. It's horrible.
Mr. Chestnut, was this the end of your conversation with Mr. Sudo?
No. Randy Sudo told me that Addison Booker was the one who paid him to take out Jeffrey Esper.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chestnut.
Good afternoon.
So, you had a couple run-ins yourself with Jeffrey Esper over the years?
Yeah, we had a parking dispute a couple years back.
And this was over the valet parking where the Carson Place customers would end up in your parking spots, correct?
Yeah, it was the parking square. It really affected everyone else where it was horrible.
And specifically, this hurt your customers' parking, didn't it?
Yeah, mine, Booker's, and even Newton's Noodle House down the street.
It hurt your business?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you went to the police about this?
Yeah, they told me it wasn't a crime, there's nothing they could do.
You went to City Hall?
Yeah, that's correct.
You went to lawyers?
Yeah, it was like my divorce all over again, it was crazy.
But nobody helped you, did they?
No, they told me it wasn't a crime, there's nothing they could do.
So let's talk a little bit about that conversation with Randy Suda. You believe that when he told you cracked the case wide open.
Yeah, I mean, he admitted the murder confession to me.
But you didn't go to the police, did you?
Well, they came the next day, and that's when I told them everything.
So it's your sworn testimony in court today that the night after the confession, you told them everything.
Well, that's when they came to me, and that's when I told them about the police. It was a couple weeks after the murder of the whole situation, but yes.
So, just so we're clear for the record, Mr. Chestnut, Randy Sudo told you the confession, and it's your sworn testimony that the day after this, you went and you told the police everything that he had told you. Is that correct?
The next day, the police came to me, and that's when I talked to them about everything. I'm pretty sure they picked up a little tip about the Lenny incident, and that's when they came in, and I told them everything.
So, Mr. Chestnut, you're aware of your signed and sworn affidavit?
Yes, I am.
And you're aware that you had up until 24 hours before this trial to make any necessary changes to it?
I think they said something like that, yeah.
And to include any relevant information about today's case?
Yeah.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm approaching a prison counsel and the witness with what has been marked as their affidavit.
The record is so recall.
Over here.
So, Mr. Chestnut, please read silently while I read it out. On line 111, this is where you state, Detective Kobayashi came by a few days later, but the real joke of it is that Ko must have had a real nose for things, because it was the night before Ko came by when I broke the whole case wide open. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah.
Alright, and then moving to this line here on 187, it says, sure, I waited for a few weeks before I said anything to the police. That's because nobody asked me. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. That's a few weeks after the murder. It was the murder, which was way back when, and then later on in June, about middle of June, is when Randy Sudo came to my bar, and the whole incident happened, and I cracked the case wide open. And then the next day, as she just read, for all of us, Dr. Kobayashi came.
So, Mr. Chestnut, so we're clear, it's your sworn testimony that you waited a few weeks after the murder to say anything to the police.
Yeah, no one came and asked me, but once I had stuff that I needed to say in the murder confession, and the police came, I told them everything I knew.
And again, you're aware of your signed and sworn affidavit?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I think you might have misunderstood what I've been saying there, but yes.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with their signed and sworn affidavit?
Permission granted.
So, Mr. Chestnut, again on line 187, it says, sure, I waited for a few weeks before I said anything to the police, correct?
Yeah, a few weeks after the murder.
So, Mr. Chestnut, then can you point to me where in your affidavit it says you waited a few weeks after the murder to go to the police?
Well, I didn't need to, because back when I said on line 112, it came right after I cracked the whole case wide open. You just told me, you agreed with me even, when I cracked the case wide open, was when Randy Sudo came to my bar.
Yes, and then the night after you came by, but you didn't tell me anything to it. You waited a few weeks. Is that correct?
No, that's a few weeks after the murder.
But reading this line, 187, it says, sure, I waited for a few weeks
Objection, Your
before I
Honor.
said
I
anything.
raised to ask and answered. I believe we've been through this a few times now.
To response?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm simply trying to clarify for the jury that nowhere in his affidavit does he say he waited a few weeks after the murder.
Permission to respond on those grounds, Your Honor.
Yes.
I believe the situation has been made clear through the testimony and the questioning.
I'll sustain the objection. Move on, counsel.
So, Mr. Chestnut, let's talk a little bit about that night of the confession.
For sure.
Randy Sudo bought you 2 to 3 drinks, didn't he?
Yeah, he bought me 2 limoncello shots about over the course of 3 to 4 hours. I barely touched them up.
but you were feeling the effects of these drinks, weren't you?
Yes, that's correct.
And you attend Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. More prejudicial than probative.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Pursuant to Montreal Rule 406, we're using this to show a habit, routine, or practice of this witness. This would go to the probative value of his trustworthiness and his credibility in today's proceedings.
Permission to respond on those grounds?
Yes.
Your Honor, under 404B, evidence of a character's pertinent trait cannot be used to identify or inflame the passions of the jury against this witness. The reference of him consuming alcohol and then trying to go into recovery for this action definitely inflames the passions of the jury because they characterize this witness as an alcoholic.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
I'm not trying to use this to portray him in any light, just to show that he has a habit, or routine, or practice of consuming alcohol, and that this has continued over a period of time. We're not trying to...
I think the issue has been adequately explained. I'll overrule your objection, and you may proceed.
So again, you frequent Alcoholics Anonymous meetings?
Yes, I'll be honest. I've suffered with alcoholism in the past, and especially back in my soccer career. But I am now to a point where I drink substantially less, and I'm a big advocate for these AA meetings and going and advocating for yourself.
So you'd agree that you have a history with a liquor problem, correct?
I'll be honest, back then it was a problem, but I'm to a point today where I can control myself, and I can have 2 or 3 drinks without being in a situation I used to be in back when I was younger.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your bar. There were 3 main restaurants on the square, as you mentioned?
Yes, that's correct.
And Jeffrey Esper was murdered, correct?
That's tragic. It's absolutely horrible that Addison would do something like that.
Addison Booker's here on trial today.
Yes, that's correct.
So that leaves you as the only fully functioning bar on the Susquehanna Square, correct?
Yes, Addison's wife is still running his place, but yes.
Addison's wife?
Or not, oh, sorry. Esper's wife. My apologies.
So, again, you're the only fully functioning bar, correct?
For the time being, yes, that's correct.
And with this loss of competition, your business has increased substantially.
Yes, that's correct. I'm worried though that in the long run, there's not going to be anybody on the square left, and it's just going to be me, and no one's going to want to come anymore.
But with this increase in business, you're actually able to take your first vacation in years, correct?
Hopefully things keep up, maybe, but as I said, I'm worried that business is going to start slowing once people realize there's nothing left on the square anymore.
But that's a yes to my question?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chestnut. No further questions, Your Honor.
Counsel, is there any redirect to this case?
There's no redirect, Your Honor. We ask the witness be excused.
The witness is excused.
Thank you.
At this time, Your Honor, the prosecution rests its case in chief, but we do request an official time check.
Time check?
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution has used 19 minutes and 12 seconds and has 10 minutes and 48 seconds remaining.
Thank you. Counsel for the defendant, would you please call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense would also like to request a time check.
All right, let's provide a time check.
The defense has used 16 minutes and 35 seconds.
At this time, the defense would like to call Addison Booker to the stand.
All right, Mr. Booker, please come forward.
Could you please state your name in relation to today's case?
My name's Addison Booker, and I'm the former owner of Automata Pizza.
So, what is Automata Pizza?
Automata Pizza was an authentic Italian place that I owned. I was wanting to be a restaurant owner, and I was more than happy to make my family proud making real authentic Italian dishes. I mean, that place felt like part of the family to me.
So, were there any competitions between the businesses on the Susquehanna Square?
I mean, of course, every business is going to have its competition. We were all in a similar place too, with very similar, or pulling from the same customer base. So we definitely have competition. But I guess you could say the main competition really was between me, Sam, and Esper, because we had close to similar businesses.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you and Jeffrey Esper. were there any turning points in this competition between the two of you?
Actually, there was. Not by my luck, but by his. Esper won the lottery, which, that's crazy. I mean, and also instead of going and, buying a nice house or going on a nice vacation, he used that money to buy my lease right after underneath me.
And as your new landlord, did he do anything?
Yeah, I think it was on May the 2nd that he came in and said that I was evicted, or that I had to pay rent soon or I'd be evicted.
And did you pay rent?
I paid my rent a week early. Again, I really wanted to keep my business around.
So did this solve your problems with Jeffrey Esper?
Fortunately, it didn't. Esper came in again on, I think, the 15th, saying that I was evicted and that I had to be out by the end of the month.
So at this point, did you go to anyone else for help?
Yeah, again, I really wanted to make sure to keep my business around, so I went to go see if Sam could help me at all.
Was Sam able to help you with anything?
Well, unfortunately, Sam wasn't able to help me himself, but he did point me in the direction of a guy named Randy.
Well, what could Randy Sudo help you with?
Well, apparently Randy was a handyman, and I didn't remember at the time he had painted my place before. I was hoping that Randy could help me fix my deck, because that brought in a lot of business, and then Save the Square coming up, I could get a lot of customers in, make some extra money, and then hopefully fight that eviction.
So did you end up going through with this plan to rebuild your deck?
Well, unfortunately, Randy never actually built the deck by the time Save the Square rolled around, so I tried to get my money back from him, but unfortunately I couldn't get a refund.
So you mentioned Savor the Square. Could you tell us what happened on the day of the event?
Well, that morning, I received some unfortunate news relating to my business, and I was overcome with emotion. I mean, not my proudest moment, I ran up on stage, interrupted the band, grabbed the mic, and yelled that Esper killed me, that he really killed me, and my life and my dreams were over because of him.
And where did you go after Savor the Square?
Well, again, I was embarrassed by my outbursts. I was distraught at pretty much my whole world falling apart, so I just had to leave town. I went to go visit my parents, because the family food always helps, and my mom's spaghetti, I went to home.
So what happened while you were away visiting your parents?
Well, while I was away, Esper died.
And when you came back to Whistleweed, did you talk to any police officers?
Yes, Detective Kobayashi came to me and we talked, but I couldn't really tell him much since I didn't know any details about the death. I just let him search my place because I had nothing to hide.
And what happened after this conversation?
Well, obviously I was arrested, and I was getting out of the day, but I can't really wrap my head around it. When people know that I didn't love the guy, and it's true I did. He definitely did some low-down dirty stuff to me, but business is still just business, and even if it's my pizza business, that's not worth being the chair over.
So, Mr. Booker, just so we're clear for the jury, did you have Jeffrey Esper killed?
No, I would never.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed.
Please proceed.
Now, Mr. Booker, I want to talk to you about your business. And just to be clear, you were a 30-year business owner on the square of Susquehanna, right?
Yep, I opened Armand Pizza about 90 years ago, or in the 90s, sorry.
And in 2013, Mr. Jeffrey Esper arrived, is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's about when he arrived.
And immediately, he started taking customers from you, right?
I mean, yeah, we were in the same general area, and he had a business kind of similar to mine, so of course he's going to take some customers away.
So that's a yes to my question?
Yes.
And he undercut you with beer specials, right?
I mean, yeah, I think his prices were a bit lower than mine.
And now, skipping forward in the timeline here, he won the lottery, right?
Yeah, which I mean, again, his luck, not mine.
And he bought your building.
Yeah.
You called this building your pride and joy, this business, wasn't it?
Yeah, again, I said, I felt like it was part of my family.
And Esper, he took that away from you. He evicted you, didn't he?
Yeah, and he said I had until the end of the month to be out.
And then, at your last opportunity to make any money at Save the Square, Miss Pooky Thomas pulled your contract, right?
Yes, I believe that's what happened.
At Esper's request.
I'm not sure if it was an Esper's request, but I know that Pooky was the one who said I couldn't sell beer anymore.
And because of all of these things, you hate Jeffrey Esper with everything you have, don't you?
Objection, Your Honor. Prejudicial over probative.
Your response, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. Part of the burden for the prosecution is the means, motive, and opportunity for this witness to commit the crime. Testifying to his mindset towards the decedent is crucial and very probative of the understanding.
Your Honor, opposing counsel eliciting that my witness hated Jeffrey Esper with everything that he has is highly prejudicial. Stating it in this way, the prejudicial value far outweighs any probative value. It's been established that my witness wasn't extremely fond of Jeffrey Esper, but saying that he hated him with everything he had is simply prejudicial and offers no probative value in today's case.
Objection is overruled.
So I'll ask you again, you hated Mr. Esper with everything you had, right?
Again, I didn't really love the guy. He used his stroke of luck to try to take my business away from me.
That's a yes to my question.
Yeah, again, I didn't love the guy.
And as we stand today, you don't care that he's dead, do you?
I mean, again, he was just a competitor to me. I can feel for his family and friends. Somebody passing away is never great, but
Now,
it doesn't really affect
directing
me.
you back to my question, you don't care Mr. Esper is dead, do you?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
I believe it was not answered, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. It was answered.
Yes. Now, moving on, I want to talk to you about your relationship with Randy Sudo. Now, we can agree, you contracted Randy Sudo to do a job for you, right?
Yes.
We can agree that you paid him $12,000 in cash, right?
Yes, I was hoping he would help. He would fix my deck in time for Save the Square if I paid him that money up front.
And we can also agree that you spoke with Randy Sudo two different ways. Once at Carly's coffee shop on the 17th.
Yes.
And once over text message.
Yep.
So I'd like to talk about Carly's coffee shop. Now, when you entered the coffee shop, you saw Randy Sudo sitting at the desk, or the counter, right?
Yes, I believe so.
And you sat down and you had a conversation with him about this job, didn't you?
Yes.
And we can agree that to the best of your knowledge, you transcribed this conversation in your sworn affidavit.
Yes, I believe so.
And you're sure you didn't leave anything out?
I think the... no, I don't think I was anything out.
Nothing was changed, and you don't want to change it within the past 24 hours, right?
No.
Well, Mr. Booker, you never told Randy Sudo you wanted to pay him for a debt, did you?
I think I never explicitly mentioned it, but I think the most I mentioned was that you heard or a reference to the file that I had on my place that did damage my deck.
So just to be clear, not once did you even say the word deck, right?
No, again, I thought with that reference and me going to Sam and him directing me to Randy that there was an understood implication about us working on the deck.
Now, moving on, I want to talk to you about those text messages. Your Honor, permission to approach with what has been previously marked as Exhibit 11.
Permission granted.
Does Your Honor still have a copy?
Thank you. I have a copy already. You may proceed, counsel.
Now, Mr. Booker, just to be clear, these are your text messages between yourself and Mr. Randy Sudo for the month of May.
Yes.
And it's a fair and accurate copy of these messages.
Yes, I believe so.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 11 into evidence.
Is there any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, as to hearsay within hearsay.
Your response?
Permission to take these one by one, Your Honor.
Yes.
The hearsay of the document itself is stipulated under Stipulation 19 that it's a regularly conducted business activity under 8036. Now, is the hearsay within hearsay to Ms. Booker's or Mr. Sudo's statements or both?
Counsel, can you respond to the question?
Yes, Your Honor. As for the secondary level of hearsay, these would only be to the statements of Randy Sudo, as Addison Booker would be the party opponent for the prosecution.
All right, please respond as to Mr. Sudo.
Yes, Your Honor. As established on my cross-examination with the witness, he testified that he contracted Randy Sudo to perform a job for him and then paid him the $12,000 to do it. This makes him an agent or employee of the party opponent under 801D2D and is therefore not hearsay.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. I don't believe that he would qualify as an employee. Just paying somebody for a job doesn't necessarily mean that he has employed him in the sense of a business, just that he was paying him to do a one-time job for him.
If I may be clear, Your Honor.
Okay.
On the ruling of 801D2D, it is an agent or employee in a representative capacity, as the ruling states. In this case, the witness did in fact testify on cross that he paid him the $12,000 and he paid him specifically to do a job for him. This meets the exception.
All right, I will overrule the objection and Exhibit 11 is admitted, and you may question the witness about the exhibit.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Permission granted.
Now, Mr. Booker, before moving on to any specific statements, I'd just like to be clear for the members of the jury. Nowhere in these texts with Randy Sudo did you tell him it was for a deck either, right?
No, not explicitly in here, but again, with talking to Sam and directly to Randy and that conversation later at Carly's, I thought the deck was implied.
But that's a yes to my question. Nowhere in these text messages did you even tell him this is what the 12 grand was for.
No, it doesn't mention it there.
Now, moving to the second page of this exhibit, if you would. On May 23rd at 8:34, you received a text message from Randy Sudo that says, "It's done. I made quite a mess, but it's all sorted now," right?
Yes, they said that.
The exact same night and time that Mr. Jeffrey Esper was
Objection, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge. This witness would have no idea when Jeffrey Esper was murdered, as he stated on direct he was out of town.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Additionally, as he stated on direct, he read about the murder while he was out of town. He stated he read it in the newspaper.
Your Honor, my witness never stated this on direct examination.
What's the standing objection?
If I can lay the proper foundation, Your Honor, may I re-ask the question?
You may.
Now, it's true that you were away at the time of Mr. Esper's passing.
Yes, I was out visiting my parents.
And it's true that while you were visiting your parents, you read about the death in the paper.
I think I had heard about it. I don't think it was necessarily through the paper.
So how did you hear about it?
I think it was when I heard that Detective Kobayashi was asking about me.
Sure. Now, I'd like to move on. You stated at 5:23, 8:44. Okay, I'll be back in town soon to check it out. Thanks, Mike calling. Right?
Yes.
So now, just to be clear for the members of the jury, not once in any interactions you had with Randy Sudo did you even tell him that this was for a death?
Again, I thought it was implied, but no, I didn't explicitly mention it.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Your Honor, I think.
All right, defense counsel, is there any redirect of this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, please proceed.
So, Mr. Booker, you were asked on cross-examination about your interactions with Randy Sudo and your conversations with him. Could you outline for the jury what you believe these conversations were about?
Well, again, I believe they were about my dad. I called to Sam to see if he could help me at all after Esper had evicted me and said I had to be out by the end of the month. So Sam said he could help me himself and point me with Randy, who was a handyman. I thought that the plan would be, as implied by Sam, that to fix my deck, make that money, hire a lawyer, and fight the eviction.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. No further questions, Your Honor.
Is there any recross?
None, Your Honor.
Right. And the witness may be excused. All right, counsel for the defense, please call your second witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Phoenix Webb to the stand.
Ms. Webb, please come forward.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Can you please state your name in relation to today's case?
My name is Phoenix Webb, and I'm a music promoter. Specifically, I promote music at the Big 3 bars in Whistler. And let me tell you, if I had promoted Beyonce's new country music album, I would have been out of this town a long time.
That's understandable. Now, let's talk about these big 3 bars that you just mentioned. Can you tell us what they are?
Well, I worked at On Pizza, the hole in the wall, and then Sam's Old Town Guy, which is kind of the least of the three, but I did some odd jobs, so I'll forgive him.
Let's talk about the hole in the wall. Can you tell the jury about your time working here?
Well, the hole in the wall, that's where I worked for Jeffrey Esper, did some books for him. That was great. This man, not a huge fan of him personally.
Now, you also did mention Amana Pizza, owned by Addison Booker. Can you tell us about your time working here?
This is where I worked for Addie, obviously. But I just did some inventory for him, got working for Addie, kind of, that's where I learned about the whole feud thing going on with me.
And finally, Ms. Webb, I think you did also mention Sam's Old Town Tavern. Can you tell the jury what it was like working for Sam Chestnut?
Sam's, I did some office functions for him, not a lot to do, not a lot of business. But he just a bit of drinking going on at Sam's, just wasn't my favorite thing, just not all sunshine and rainbows, if you know what I mean.
Ms. Webb, were there any specific ways that Sam's drinking may have affected life at the tavern?
Yeah, like, not only did his whole drinking with the customers routine get old pretty quickly, he was always forgetting to order this and forgetting to order that. It just wasn't a great work environment.
I'd now like to circle back to the feud that you mentioned between Addison Booker and Jeffrey Esper. Did Sam ever try to involve himself in this feud?
Yeah, like Sam would leave these negative reviews on like both of their like Yelp, Google review pages.
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay as Sam Chestnut's negative reviews on Yelp.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. I don't believe the witness brought up any specific statement that was said in these reviews. She's just describing the reviews and what connotation they have.
Your Honor, hearsay is defined as a verbal or nonverbal assertion. The assertion that there were negative reviews against Anamana Pizza and the hole in the wall is an out-of-court statement being used to prove the truth of the matter asserted under 801.
Your Honor, may I be heard?
May.
Hearsay is a specific statement that is elicited to prove the truth of the matter asserted. And no specific statement has been elicited by this witness. She's just talking about the nature of these reviews that were left under these Yelp pages.
Response, Your Honor?
Briefly.
Nowhere in 801 is it outlined that there must be a specific statement. Nonverbal conduct is also a provision of the hearsay rule.
I understand your argument, but the objection is overruled.
Now, Ms. Webb, let's get back to the question. Were there any specific ways that Sam tried to involve himself in this feud?
Yeah, like I said, he was leaving these reviews on Esper and Booker's pages, just kind of negative. By the time he was through with them, they both had like less than 3 stars.
And during your time working at the tavern, have you ever found anything of interest in Sam's office?
Yeah, I was going through Sam's office this one time, and there was like the Anamana Pizza cut rate beer flyers and like little Anamana Pizza business cards, and the flyers, they just went missing right after that whole deck fire at Anamana Pizza.
Now, Ms. Webb, as you did work at Sam's Tavern around this time, can you tell the jury how Sam's business was doing?
Yeah, Sam wasn't doing too great, just had to start selling off his personal items just to get by, not something I personally could ever do.
I'd like to now fast forward to May 19th at the Sacred Square. Can you tell us what you observed at this event?
Savor the Square event, that was the day Booker lost his like hairpin brewery deal or whatever, and just like he got up on stage at the Savor the event. Like, have you ever seen the 2009 VMAs where Kanye just grabbed that mic from Taylor? It looked a little like that, just saying things like Esper ruined him, Esper killed him, and just some words,
And now, Ms. Webb, based off of what you saw from Addison Booker at this event, and your time working alongside him at his restaurant, have you yourself ever observed any violent actions by Booker?
No, Addie, he's not a violent guy, just passionate, just loves his business, all barking away.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, but before I proceed, we request a brief time check.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution has used 23 minutes and 58 seconds, and therefore has 6 minutes and 2 seconds remaining.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Webb, I want to talk to you about some things that you didn't mention on direct examination. You witnessed a conversation between Sam Chestnut and Randy Sudo, right?
I did.
Randy Sudo said he was desperate for some cash, right?
He did. I believe he said he would hire himself out as a hitman.
Right. He would hire himself out as a hitman if it came down to it, right?
Yeah, that's what he said.
So, there were arrangements of a meeting between the defendant, Addison Booker, and Randy Sudo, right?
Yeah, it was between Sam and Randy. We're talking about running Addie out of town and dealing with the escort problem later.
Ms. Webb, I'm not asking you about running Addison Booker out of town. I'm asking you about the meeting. The meeting was between Addison Booker and Randy Sudo, right?
Which meeting are you talking about exactly?
To help take care of the escort problem, that meeting?
Yeah, that was Sam and Randy.
They arranged for a meeting between Addison Booker and Randy Sudo because he was desperate for some cash, right?
Yeah, there was some money mentioned, I believe. Well, something like 12 grand.
12 grand you testified to, right?
Yeah, it was thrown around.
Now, I want to talk about the feud between the victim and the defendant. You were well aware of the feud between Jeffrey Esper and Addison Booker, right?
Yeah, it was pretty well known around town.
You knew Jeffrey Esper evicted Addison Booker from a restaurant, right?
I did.
You thought Addison Booker was ruined, right?
Yeah, it wasn't going too well for Addie.
This was around the time of the Save the Square event.
Yes.
You thought Mr. Booker was feeling the pressure, right?
Just a bit, yeah.
You thought he reached this breaking point, right?
Yeah, remember the whole, grabbing the mic thing was a rough time.
Based on what you saw, he wasn't too happy that day, right?
No, he wasn't.
After he lost that hairpin deal to Jeffrey Esper, right?
Yes, that's right.
And after Jeffrey Esper evicted Addison Booker, right?
Yeah, for anyone.
So he took the mic just like the 2010 VMAs, right?
2009, but yeah.
I'm sorry, 2009 VMAs. And he said, "You ruined me, you killed me, and now I'm going to kill you." He said that, right?
Yeah, it was a passionate statement.
And a few days later, Jeffrey Esper was found shot in his office, right?
Yeah, poor Esper.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. No further questions, Your Honor.
Counsel, is there any redirect for Ms. Webb?
None at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Webb, you may be excused. I'll invite counsel for the defendant to call their third witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Pooky Thomas to the stand.
Ms. Thomas, please come forward.
May we proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name in relation to this case for the court?
Hi, my name is Pooky Thomas, and I work as the head of promotions for Hurricane Brewery. Well, I'm really the only promoter there, but I guess that does make me the head.
Now, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about Hairpin Brewery. What is the company about?
Well, it's not pride and joy, but the answer that you're probably looking for. We're this fine craft beer store where we are all about the hops. We're also hosting fun little events like trivia. Don't ask me to be on your team though, I'm not very good, but I always have so much fun for the most part.
Well, Ms. Thomas, what do you mean by for the most part?
Well, there was this one guy, his name was Brandon. He was just always making me feel so uncomfortable, grabbing at our mascot, this bunny costume, and I I guess one time though, he did take it over the edge. I went to offer him another free sample of our beer, and he pushed me right into the glass table and shattered the whole thing.
Well, what happened after this?
Well, Esper served him with a lifetime ban, and I guess Randy was a big fan of our beer because he started yelling. He said, "I'm going to kill you," and then he even brought Esper's dog Rags into it.
Now, moving on, Miss Thomas, I'd like to talk to you about Hairpin's clientele. Was the hole in the wall one of your biggest supporters?
Yes, and I'm on pizza, and hopefully one day Sam's Old Town Tavern. As I am the promoter, I'm always there trying to get more business.
Now, you just mentioned Sam's Old Town Tavern. What can you tell us about the place?
Well, other than the fact that I was always over there trying to get more business, I remember specifically one time I was in there and I noticed some strange flyers on his counter.
Well, what was strange about these flyers on Sam's counter?
They were the promotional flyers for on pizza, which is strange because, I mean, they're competitors as they are businesses in the same square, so it just confused me.
Now, I'd like to talk to you about the Savor the Square event. Did anything interesting happen that day?
Well, interesting is an understatement. Addison got a little emotional. He kind of ran on stage and started yelling. He talked about how Esper ruined him and how he killed him and then ran off the stage in a fit of tears.
Now, after Savor the Square ended, what happened?
Well, I had to collect my check with hole in the wall and I wasn't able to.
Well, Miss Thomas, why weren't you able to?
Well, I went to the hole in the wall to collect my check. When I punched in the code of the back door and let myself in, I saw him slouched over his desk and his little dog Rags was at his feet. And when I noticed the amount of blood, I immediately took his pulse and there was none, so I called the police.
I'm sorry to hear that, Miss Thomas. Any questions, Your Honor?
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
Yes.
Good evening, Ms. Thomas.
Good evening.
You've known about the long-lasting feud between Jeffrey Esper and Addison Booker for years. Is that right? Yes, I was made aware of the feud. And you can agree that you always keep a close eye on social media sites that affect your beer business? Yeah, I try to keep up to date. Which led you to observe the negative reviews. Jeffrey Esper and Addison Booker left each other. Is that right? Yeah, I noticed that they were leaving negative reviews on each other. And you thought that more of the nastiness was coming from Jeffrey Esper himself. Is that right? Yeah, I do believe that maybe Esper took it a little too far, but I was mainly just concerned for Hairpin. And Addison Booker mentioned their feud to you non-stop. Is that right? Yeah, they did make it pretty apparent that there was a feud. So that's when you started to think that Addison Booker's business was heading towards a death spiral. Is that right?
Objection, speculation.
First to respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yes, I'm simply asking if the witness thinks if this is what Addison Booker's business was like. And therefore she can respond however she'd like, and therefore my question does not call for any speculation.
Your Honor, opposing counsel directly asked my witness if Addison's business was heading toward the death spiral, and while this might be, while opposing counsel asked my witness if she thinks this, in order for her to answer this, she would have to delve specifically into the mindset of Addison and her business, which she cannot do.
Permission to respond on those grounds, Your Honor?
Yes.
Pursuant to Rule 701A, the witness would be testifying to her rationally based perception. By using the word think in my question, she would not be making a formal conclusion about Mr. Addison Booker's business.
The objection is overruled and the witness may answer.
Would you like me to repeat my question? You thought that Addison Booker's business was heading towards a death spiral. Is that right? Yes, I would say that Addison's business was slowly declining. Now, moving on, I want to talk to you about the death of the victim, Jeffrey Esper, and specifically the events that led to his death. Are you aware that in early May, Jeffrey Esper bought Addison Booker's building? Yes, I was made aware of this. You're also aware that he evicted him from the property, correct? Yes, I am. Miss Thomas, is it true that you withdrew Hairpin's beer contract from Addison Booker's business? Yeah, Esper called me with a business deal, so I had to accept for haircut. Right. On May 18th, Jeffrey Esper demanded that he become Hairpin's exclusive tap seller. Is that correct? Yes, Esper said that he had a business deal, so we took it. And that made you feel awful, didn't it? I would say that I was pretty upset since I was in business with both of them for quite some time, but it made sense for business. It made you upset because Addison Booker told you that he needed you more than ever. Is that right? Yeah, Addison did try to voice his opinions, but I can't listen to them. I have to do what's best for my private door. And you thought that selling Hairpin's beer was his last chance to make any money? I wouldn't say it was his last chance to make any money, but I would say that it probably took away most of his chance of coming. That's yes to my question, Ms. Thomas. I suppose you could say that. And then 2 days after, 2 days after you pulled the contract, Addison Booker ran up on stage at the first sight of Jeffrey Esper. Is that correct? Yeah, Addison did run up on stage and start yelling a little bit. And she yelled, "You took away what mattered most to me. Now I have nothing, and I will not rest until I take what you care most about." Those were his words? Yes, I do believe that is what Addie said. And on May 23rd, you found Jeffrey Esper murdered in his office. Yes, and his dog Rabbits. Thank you, Ms. Thomas. I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
For timing purposes, counsel for the defendant, will there be any redirect of this witness?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, and the witness is excused. Does the defense rest?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense rests their case in chief.
All right, now that the evidence in this case is concluded, we will hear closing arguments, beginning with counsel for the defendant.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. Tonight's case can be broken down into the 3 L's: liquor, lies, and the law. Our first L is liquor. Now, the prosecution has come before you saying that tonight's case is about a feud between 2 people, Addison Booker and Jeffrey Esper. Now, we in the defense agree that there was a feud between these 2 people, but we urge you to take a closer look at the third and arguably more important member of this feud, Sam Chestnut. Now, as everyone in Wistomy knows, Sam Chestnut was having a bit of financial struggles. This was due in part to his alcohol struggles. As Phoenix Webb laid out for you today, these alcohol problems and liquor problems led to him forgetting to make payments, forgetting to place orders, and this hurt his business. Now, with Addison Booker and Jeffrey Esper out of the picture, Sam Chestnut's business has went through the roof. He'll even be able to take his first vacation in years because of this increase in profit. Now for our second L, we come to lies. Now, Robin Leco told you that he heard the conversation between Addison Booker and Randy Sudo that outlined a deal that was made. He was seated in the middle of a crowded cafe, surrounded by a cacophony of noise, pots clanging, and side conversations. And he even told you today that he suffers hearing loss from his time in the Navy. Now, Robin Leco also has his own personal motive for testifying in today's case. As you've heard, he's writing a book about the feud between Addison Booker and Jeffrey Esper, and with the return of a guilty verdict, the profit from this would increase substantially. He has his own monetary motive for testifying for the prosecution in today's case. And then we come to our third and final L, the law. Detective Jaden Kobayashi had one job in today's case: to perform a reliable investigation. He had to uphold the law and adhere to procedures, and he failed to do that. Now, members of the jury, as you saw outlined in Exhibit 9, Detective Jaden Kobayashi's fingerprints overlaid the prints from the suspect. They ruined this evidence, and had he been wearing gloves, these prints would have been more conclusive. But instead, he put his own fingerprints on the only spot where fingerprints from the suspect were found. And misplacing or ruining evidence has happened not once but twice in his past. This trend has simply continued into today's case. Now, Detective Jaden Kobayashi also started this case with a confirmation bias. He assumed that Addison Booker was the only suspect to begin with, and the only investigation he did into other suspects was just looking at Sam Chestnut's financial record. Even though, to this day, he still wonders what Sam Chestnut's involvement was, because he knew too much. Now, the burden of proof in tonight's case lies solely with the prosecution. They prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. This is the highest burden in our legal system. And we, the defense, had it. They had to prove that Addison Booker is guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. And they tried to prove this to you tonight by saying that today's case is as simple as A, B, C. Now, we, the defense, would like to offer our own version of A, B, C. First would be alcohol, bias, and then corruption. The alcohol problems of Sam Chestnut led to a financial motive, giving him his own motive in tonight's case. The bias from Robin Leco's testimony would prove that she is not a reliable witness. And the corruption from the investigation, in Detective Jaden Kobayashi's investigation, showed you tonight that this was not a reliable investigation. Now, by way of the ABCs, as well as the 3 L's of liquor, lies, and the law, the defense has been able to cast mountains of doubt upon the prosecution's case. And if there is any doubt left in your mind after the evidence and the testimony that you have heard today, you must rule in favor of the defense and return the verdict of not guilty for Addison Booker. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. We will now hear a closing argument for the prosecution.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
Permission granted.
May it please the court, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. Despite the defense's best efforts to convince you otherwise, this case really is as simple as the A, B, C. Aggression, bankruptcy, and conspiracy. Now, members of the jury, the defense has come before you tonight and attempted to make you believe that Addison Booker, a 30-year-long business owner, spent $12,000 in cash to fix a deck on a building that he didn't own for a deck that he could never use again. When asked about this deck on cross-examination, Mr. Booker told you, members of the jury, he never even told Randy Sudo that's what this money was for. He told you the deck was never completed, there was no receipts from building materials, there was not even a record of him telling Mr. Sudo this is what it was for. And the defense came before you and tried to tell you something else. They tried to tell you that Sam Chestnut is the one behind this conspiracy, that Sam Chestnut is guilty of the death of Mr. Esper. Well, let me make something clear. The defense had Sam Chestnut on the witness stand. Why didn't they ask him about all these things they're bringing up to your attention? They didn't ask him about his means, about his motive, opportunity, intent, any added money, conversations with Sudo, none of it. Because it didn't happen. Now, we, the prosecution, made this case simple and clear. The ABCs. Addison Booker was an aggressive business owner. From threatening Yelp reviews to public threats for murder, Addison Booker acted with escalating aggression towards the decedent, Mr. Esper. Now, eventually, Mr. Esper got tired of this aggression. Hoping to finally put a rest to this business feud, he bought the defendant's building, canceled her lease, and evicted her from the property. Maybe now, Mr. Esper would finally be able to rest. Maybe the aggression would stop, but it didn't. Because of these actions from Mr. Esper, Addison Booker went bankrupt, and he blamed the victim, Jeffrey Esper. This leads us to C, the conspiracy. You heard Robin Leco testify that there was a large sum of cash pushed against the table to Randy Sudo, telling him that dirtbag Esper is going to get what's coming. Members of the jury, 4 days after the defendant went up and told Mr. Esper he was going to kill him, Randy Sudo followed through with what Addison Booker paid him to do, and he shot Mr. Esper straight through the back of the head and killed his poor dog as well. Now, the defense is right. We, the prosecution, do in fact hold the burden of proof. We must have proven beyond all reasonable doubt each element of the 2 charges that we hold against Mr. Booker. That's conspiracy to commit murder and murder in the first degree. Conspiracy to commit murder holds 2 elements: that there was an agreement to commit the crime, and that the defendant, Mr. Booker, took an overt action in furtherance of the agreement. First degree murder holds 3 elements: that Mr. Jeffrey Esper is dead. Now, this is not a contested fact. That Mr. Jeffrey Esper was killed by an accomplice or co-conspirator of the defendant, and that the killing was done with intention and malice. Well, let's break down how we, the prosecution, have met this burden tonight. Jeffrey Esper is dead is uncontested. We've covered this. That an accomplice or co-conspirator of the defendant killed him. Well, we saw that the fingerprint evidence showed that Randy Sudo was at the scene of the crime. The gun was found in his room, in his apartment, and Mr. Booker testified himself that he commissioned him to do something. We'll get there. The third is intention and malice. Well, ladies and gentlemen, nothing was stolen from the office. Mr. Sudo entered through the office, he killed Mr. Esper, he killed his poor dog, and then he left. That's intention. Now, conspiracy to commit murder, its first element. There was an agreement to commit the crime. Mr. Leco heard the testimony that the dirtbag was going to get what's coming, and Mr. Booker, admitted he gave the money $12,000, and then he hated him with everything he had. He didn't care Esper's dead, still doesn't. We, the prosecution, are confident that through the forensic evidence, the fingerprint analysis, and the testimony from every witness that you heard tonight, we have met our burden of proof. We, the prosecution, respectfully ask that when you go into the jury room to deliberate, you find Addison Booker guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and murder in the first degree, bringing justice to Mr. Esper's family. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. All right, while our jurors are completing their scoring, I think it would be entirely appropriate, now we've concluded this trial, that we give our teams a huge round of
You can all sit down. All right, we're here to announce the winner of our state championship. Announcing this year will be the president of the State Bar Association. It's my honor to introduce Donald. I'm going to give him the floor, Mr. President.
Welcome, everyone, and I just want to say I've traveled all over Pennsylvania in the last year, and the one place I want to go that I haven't been to is Wissowee, Pennsylvania. So thank you for spending 5 months in Wissowee. I just want to say, to begin, you are all winners. You are incredible teammates, you are incredible teams, and as I like to say, a team is not someone alone. A team is someone who does something together, and that is so, so important. And you're going to learn the lessons of teammates, leadership throughout your life. But I just want to say at this point, I want to thank the teams that are supporting you. And first, Team PBA, and I think you all know Maria Engels, who is our Woman for All season, who has done a phenomenal job. if you would please not clap until I'm through, or else we'll be a little while. But I just want to say thank you to all the PBA staff who are here, led by Executive Director Matt Holliday, Deputy Executive Director Bill Chrisman, and all the staff. I want to say thank you to Team PBA Mock Trial Executive Committee, who have done an absolutely phenomenal job, including Jen Menekenne here, including John Coltash, including Jane Meyer, including Dave Travaskis. They have asked 262 teams over the last 6 months to do an incredible job, and they have done an incredible job here today. I just want to thank the judge, Judge Wilson, for doing an outstanding job today. And finally, I'd like to thank a team I'm going to call Team Success. And Team Success is who? And that's all of the high schools that are involved here, the two, including the faculty advisors, including the lawyer advisors who've worked so hard over these many months. So I just want to say thank you to them, and especially thank you to the parents who've lived with this Anamata pizza and hole in the wall and all these arguments and worries for all these months. Thank you so much. And I finally want to thank everyone here today, because you are the top of 262 teams out of the entire state of Pennsylvania. And you know, are you going to take the lessons with you? Are they going to make any difference in your careers? Don't rely on me. Rely on the words of John Adams, who was our second president, who always looks back and says, you know what? The most important thing that I did before I was president, and the basic lessons that I learned to be president, were when I was a courtroom attorney, when I was a defense attorney in the case defending the British soldiers who were accused of murder in the Boston Massacre. And it wasn't him alone. He worked with 3 other people, 4 lawyers. And you know, he said he learned about collaboration. He learned about the importance of understanding the confluence of the law, the facts, and the passions of all the witnesses. And what did he do? He took that inspiring knowledge and he said, that inspired me in all my future work. My work with the Declaration of Independence, my work as an ambassador to France, my work as president, my work as designing the Constitution for Massachusetts. So I just want to say thank you all, because what you are learning here is going to serve you and hopefully our entire country for the rest of your lives. So I'm going to leave by quoting one of my favorite authors, an author who is blind, but an author who had a lot of vision. And that author was Helen Keller. And she said, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. So with that said, I am going to have to choose among both of you winning teams. So at this time, with all due thanks and respect and honor for everything you've done, I am going to announce this year's state champion. And the jury finds for our new Pennsylvania state champion, Abington High School.